No, it is, thank you, Dennis. It is, it has pro bono legal work, continues to gain ground in Mexico, and we are finding more and more lawyers interested in impacting social projects, but to be contributing with their experience and knowledge to benefit Mexican society. As you know, the Pro Bono Standard is the document that contains the basis, research, and consideration for the standardization of the pro bono work in Mexico in order to involve the entire legal community in carrying out this work for numerous professionals, wherever they are, in law firms, bar associations, law directors, law schools, or whatever can join the movement. For us, this panel is our one of the most important ones that we have, because we have like the best key pro bono lawyers in the world. And with that said, my aspirations to be one of you one day in my life, because we really admire you and we know your work and what you do, and the impact work that you do internationally is great. And that is why it is an honor for Estándares Pro Bono Mexico to have you here. The three of you are key contacts for us, and we follow you, and we know that all of the impact that you do. That is why we are very, very, very proud of having you here, and we want to share with all of the attendees all the impact work that you do. In the Estándares Pro Bono Mexico, we are trying very hard to promote the work as you do in your countries and in your regions, and try to do the impactful work that you do. So that's my introduction, and I hope that you can please share the presentation so we can move on with the rest of it. And we are having here, and I will present my colleagues of the Estándares Pro Bono Mexico, Yvette Montero, Maru Cortázar, and Carla Aguilar, which will be appearing right now in the presentation, are the ones that are co-directing along with me the Pro Bono Standards movement. And with us, we have two key persons as well, Rosario Lombera and Miriam Villafañe from Baker and McKenzie. And Rosario will be our panelist leader for moderator, all the panelists that are here. And she will be presenting all the panelists, the great women that we have here. The next one, please, Denise. And the next one, please. So with that, I present you Rosario Lombera. Could you share the next screen, please? She's the partner of employment at Baker and McKenzie, Mexico. And as I said, she will be moderating this panel. Thank you very much, Charin.
Good morning to everyone. Thank you so much, Lila, thank you so much for inviting me, Estándares Pro Bono, to moderate this wonderful panel. I am so happy to be today here with Jaclyn Pampel, Yasmin Waljee, and Lisa Dewey, that will be our panelists today. I will be just moderating, and thank you to all of you to be with us this morning. I don't know if we could go ahead with the presentation, please. Thank you so much. So we will introduce now Jaclyn. We call her Jackie in the firm. Well, Jackie is our pro bono partner at Baker and McKenzie. She is engaged in all types of pro bono activities in the whole world. She works a lot with us in Mexico, and she has a major practice with us on all pro bono activities. I will introduce now Lisa. Lisa comes from D.L. Piper. She's here. She's a first full-time pro bono partner also. And she basically is in charge with all the pro bono initiatives at D.L. Piper. And Waljee, please. And Waljee has been key establishing the pro bono practice at Hogan Lovells. She is also a key person in all these pro bono initiatives. So if it's all right for you, and thank you to all who are joining today. If it's all right for you, we will start with the questions. I will here start today with Jackie. And for all the panel, my first question would be, how has pro bono practice evolved in the countries and regions in which you work? Starting with Jackie.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here today with some great colleagues and some other great friends, old and new. It's such an interesting question about that evolution of pro bono. Really for us, we look at it from a global perspective. And I think the biggest theme that I have to share with you all is the theme of more. There's been an awful lot more, just as Lila mentioned, this kind of ground gaining on pro bono. That's true from across the globe. And that's really what we've seen at Baker and McKenzie, that there's a lot more openness and a lot more interest from folks, both within our firm and clients that we work with directly on billable matters as well, that are coming to us and saying, we want to get involved in pro bono. And I think some of this is coming out of, in some ways, that there are more bar associations across the globe that make it more acceptable and really start to encourage pro bono taking place in different jurisdictions. So this increase in openness and interest has been a huge positive point in our pro bono practice, where we've been really able to get more folks involved on pro bono across the firm. As part of that more theme, we've been seeing a lot of folks over the last couple of years, especially, come to us with ideas of problems that they want to solve in their local community. And that's been a little bit of an evolution, where before, many years ago, we were bringing together projects and sharing them with folks and trying to get folks in different offices really involved in pro bono. And that level of depth and engagement in pro bono has changed. And now we're seeing people come to us in pro bono and saying, hey, this issue is happening in my community. What can we do about it? How can we get involved in pro bono? And that's been exciting, honestly. That different energy and that excitement coming from multiple different offices and corners of our firm, but our corporate clients as well, to get involved in pro bono has been a real positive and has increased in many ways the depth of involvement that people have in pro bono. So it's not about taking on a single project. It's really about getting involved in an issue and making that kind of impact that folks want to make, either in their local community, a broader community, or even on the global scale. So it's been a really positive thing that we've seen, and seems to only, that theme of more seems to only be increasing from what we can see on a global scale.
So Lisa, I don't know if you want to be now sharing your experience on pro bono practice, how it has evolved, basically in your country, in the region you practice.
Sure. Thank you so much, Maria. And it's wonderful to be a part of this panel with Jackie and Yasmin. It's wonderful to see everyone. So thank you so much for the invitation. In terms of pro bono, I definitely agree with Jackie in terms of this theme of more. I was nodding my head for sure. And I do think that there has been a lot more pro bono happening and a growing interest in pro bono. And certainly all of the global events that have been happening over the last few years in particular, people are very motivated to help, which is wonderful, because one of the things that I was going to say about the evolution of pro bono, while in the United States, and I should say I'm based in our Washington, D.C. office. So that is where I'm located, and I help direct and manage our pro bono program in the United States. And, what we have seen is that every year there are millions of hours that lawyers in private practice devote to pro bono, which is wonderful. And that has definitely grown over the years. But what we're also seeing is that there continues to be an access to justice crisis in the United States. Despite the growing number of pro bono hours that people are devoting, the needs continue to be greater than ever and grow. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that the Legal Services Corporation just issued its most recent Justice Needs Report for 2022. And one of the things that it said is that there are over 92% of Americans do not get the legal help that they need for their legal problems. And these are basic needs such as housing, education, healthcare, income, safety needs are going unmet. So the access to justice crisis in our country is continuing to increase. And so, that as pro bono counsel, it's something we're all very concerned about. And pro bono, of course, is one tool to try to help close that justice gap. But I think it's something that we need to continue to be mindful of and continue to think of other creative solutions to this crisis. And certainly more pro bono would be one of those. But in terms of other trends that I think we've seen over the pandemic, and I think, the fact that we're doing this by Zoom right now is an example of this. I think we've all had to pivot and have done so very well over the pandemic to providing legal services remotely or bringing volunteers together remotely, whether it's over Zoom or other Microsoft Teams or other technologies to serve clients. And so now, we are serving clients using technology, often bringing volunteers together across the country, especially on areas like immigration or serving veterans. So that is good because we are actually able to increase access to justice for people. It's often easier for our clients to meet with their pro bono lawyer over Zoom or using technology. They don't have to travel to our office. They don't have to arrange for childcare or take time off work. And so we're able to actually better serve our clients using this technology. And so I think that's been kind of a leapfrog moment where we've really done more than we ever thought we would have before. And so I think that'll be a continuing trend. And I think now the conversation a lot is, what do we keep? What are the things that we've learned over the last 2 or 3 years that we want to keep going forward, even as we're able to meet more in person? Another trend, this is the third thing I wanted to mention, and Jackie mentioned this as well, which is an increased collaboration. We are collaborating more than ever with our corporate clients on pro bono, with other law firms, with a variety of legal services providers, again, across the country, and really developing larger impactful projects. So, pro bono, I think, as we all know, is such a friendly, generous community, and everybody is very interested, I feel like, in collaborating, which is wonderful, and I think makes all of our jobs really fun too. The final thing I would say in terms of trends is that there continues to be this focus on aligning our pro bono with other firm goals. So whether that be connecting with each other, which again is more important than ever as we continue to work in this hybrid work environment, working on pro bono matters across practice groups and offices brings people together, which is really important. We also are seeing increased synergies with our diversity and inclusion programs across the firm. Of course, professional development, always, as we all know, doing pro bono is a wonderful way to gain skills very quickly. And so continuing to really think of pro bono as a glue that not only holds us together, but that can also really help with all of the goals that the firm has. And so that is certainly a continuing trend. And I think, as I've always said, pro bono, I think, makes our lawyers happier. It's incredibly fulfilling. So I will stop there. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Lisa. Jasmine, would you like to share your experience with all of us?
Yes, well, thank you ever so much for inviting me. And I'm particularly pleased to be with Lila on this platform, because it's fantastic for us to be able to do something together across the seas. It's a dark and cold London, I'm afraid. And so in terms of what I've learned over the 25 years that I have been involved in pro bono, is actually seeing, as everyone has said, the convergence of pro bono with the interests of the commercial world. When I first started this work, I would operate in a kind of silo where I'd be doing access to justice work, encouraging people to go out and help the poorest in our society. But what has been really positive over those 25 years is to see the growth of the corporate world wake up and understand that their license to operate is also about addressing issues such as modern day slavery, through to the climate crisis that we're facing at the moment, which is hugely important for all of us right now and for our existence. And seeing those worlds come together, which then allows us to build and do really impactful projects together, has been an extreme blessing, I think, for the work that we all do, and gives us generally a sense of real satisfaction and partnership that everybody else has been talking about. So I completely agree. We have to do more. We have to do more problem solving from my perspective. We have some huge global challenges to face. In Europe, we're facing a war, an unjustified war, and having to adjust very quickly to crises, whether they arise from warfare, famine, or just the lack of access to justice and the cost of living crisis, which is occurring for everyone all over the world. And so the ability to collaborate, as you say, within law firms across practice areas, working with Lila and my colleagues in Europe, or across the profession, which is fabulous. We've established a network to help Afghan women refugees, which involves about 50 firms from across Europe, which is fantastic, through to collaborating with our clients, perhaps on modern day slavery issues. So I think I feel very positive and hopeful for the future, despite the fact that we're all going through a horrifically difficult period of time and turbulent change.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you so much to all of you. Great to have these experiences shared with us. And now the next question would be, how do you motivate your staff to work on pro bono issues, and how do you count pro bono work within the firm? This one is for Jackie. Thank you, Jackie.
Yes. Thanks, Maria. I love this question, and I really come to motivation from an interesting place. Before I was a pro bono partner at Baker, I was an associate and partner in Baker in our tax practice group in Chicago. And so I have been on the end of getting motivated to do pro bono, but also on the motivation side of pro bono. And motivation for us takes a lot of different forms. And I think the biggest piece of that, particularly over the last few years, has been helping people feel like they can solve other people's problems. And as Yasmin mentioned, which I thought was such a good point to raise, that these crises that are happening in our communities across the globe in what feels like a daily basis almost, are problems that people want to solve. And one of the biggest positive pieces of COVID to me was seeing people, colleagues, corporate clients, come to us in our pro bono team and say, oh my gosh, I heard about this issue. How can I solve it? I heard people want to try to access some of the funding that the US government has for folks that are facing COVID loss. How do I help this small nonprofit in my community get this? Or how do we help healthcare workers get meaningful access to directives and life directives if they're working at the face of COVID patients? Things like that are all ideas that really came from folks coming to us in pro bono and saying, I want to help solve this problem. And I think problem solving is such a core to folks when it comes to why they want to do pro bono and how they want to do pro bono. I spend a good amount of time presenting to our associates, presenting to partners, presenting to practice groups on pro bono issues. And I always try to aim to think about one substantive problem that group can think about and be part of solving. And that type of substantive guidance and problem solving is just a great way that I have seen to really be able to get folks involved in pro bono on a bigger scale. As part of that motivation, I think you also have to inspire, honestly. I think, and that inspiration is going to look different for anyone. In the United States, all of our new first-year associates just started, I think it's November now, so a couple weeks ago. But I love that energy that these new associates bring in every single year, because they come to us excited to get involved in the things that we already have planned and are already working on. But they bring us new ideas about things that inspire folks. They bring us ideas that are coming up from their law schools or their communities or their past jobs about issues that they care about. And so what we're always looking for is, how can we help inspire people through the work that we do, through the topics that we talk about. A great example of this would be coming out of another crisis created in the United States, which is a lot of the legislation and executive actions that are happening in the United States and states like Florida and Texas directed at young people that are LGBTQ. Particularly in Florida, after, for folks that aren't aware, after the governor of Florida stated that this "Don't Say Gay" bill, we're basically kind of banning in schools and other settings people from talking about LGBTQ status. And then some of the actions in Texas coming against young people getting life-saving medical care if they're transgender. And these two things happened around the same time. And we found that so many folks in our firm are really hurting in a lot of ways and really struggling with these concepts. So we just kind of ran a webinar, honestly, to get folks talking about the issues with some of our friends at Lambda Legal that we work with really closely, specifically on issues related to young people and LGBTQ rights. That was run by our North American CEO, as well as some folks at Lambda through our pro bono team. And I have to tell you, that webinar was such a great example of bringing people into substantive issues and inspiring them at a time that feels dark to get involved. So out of that webinar came a couple different projects that we're working on with Lambda. And I've had no problem finding volunteers to get involved, because I've got a treasure trove of folks that came to this webinar and said, gosh, this is something that's hurting me. And now I'm feeling inspired. And now I feel like I can do something. So that's just a great example of using that inspiration and helping folks find something that they can get involved in. In a lot of ways for us, pro bono is about building community. This was actually something that was a reflection of our North America CEO, who noted how in a lot of ways, especially during COVID, getting people involved in projects and opportunities was really a key way that we were building community within our firm. I had the great pleasure over the last 2 days of sitting in our Chicago office at a long conference table with about 10 of my colleagues as we ran an election protection hotline that a lot of firms do amazing work on here in the US, which is a nonpartisan hotline to help protect the right to vote. And being able to sit shoulder to shoulder with people and work through some of the issues is another way that you can really build that community and motivate people to get involved in pro bono. A lot of the volunteers we had in our election protection hotline actually came from our transactional group. And this is another key motivation that we found is a lot of times practice groups at our firms or industry groups, they want to take ownership of things and they really want to help drive things within their team. And so one of our partners out of our Chicago office actually was one of our leads on this hotline and brought her whole team in to be part of the election protection hotline. That's associates, that's partners across the firm, that's legal project managers across our firm. So folks of all different skills were motivated by one of their leaders that they work with every single day saying, hey, this is important to me, come get involved in this effort. So using those kind of, leveraging those kind of practice groups and industry groups and really recruiting volunteers with this language of leadership, helping them be led by folks that they work with every day and being part of issues that are being led by those people that they value and trust, as well as their pro bono team, has been a huge piece of how we motivate people. As part of that, actually, one of the exercises that we do at a lot of our associate meetings that we have here at Baker is we always want folks to introduce themselves and talk about their area of practice, as well as their area of pro bono practice. And this is kind of a mantra we're trying to build within Baker and McKenzie is your elevator pitch about who you are as an attorney make that include your pro bono work. So the last time I had a chance to sit with some associates in one of our offices in Texas, we had people talk about how they're IP lawyers, but their pro bono work is really focused on immigration work because they care about folks coming to our border, or having a tax lawyer talk about how their work is focused on education in schools and representing young people that need representation when they're being expelled from schools. And that motivation ends up motivating everyone else. So it's a great way to not only motivate some people, but then let them motivate everyone else within the firm. And so bringing that kind of language of this is my area of practice and bringing pro bono to that has been a really powerful tool to continue to motivate folks. When all else fails on motivation, we also do have swag, and I have sitting here next to me our election protection hat that we gave out to all of our volunteers on our election protection hotline. And it's really about pride. It's about being part of something that other people want to be a part of. And it's just an outward manifestation of that. And we don't do swag all the time. But for an effort like our election protection work, it was a great opportunity to let people really show their pride about the work they'd been a part of. I wanted to turn really quickly to that last question that you asked, Maria, about the hours. That looks a little bit different across all of our offices at Baker and McKenzie. In North America, there's a certain chunk of hours that are counted as pro bono hours, and those hours are equal to billable hours. So in the United States, for example, associates have up to 125 hours to use between qualified pro bono work and qualified diversity and inclusion initiatives, and they can use them however they want to participate in work. And that makes a difference to young people, frankly. As a former billing attorney in our firm, having that opportunity and that support from the firm to say, yes, your pro bono hours matter and they should be counted as billable is a really important piece to continuing to show that, give that motivation and show that support in different ways. Back to you, Maria.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, I think we're very lucky. Young generations are really willing to be involved in pro bono work. And I also think that this recognition of counting pro bono hours as billable hours is great for them to really be motivated and really invest time on pro bono matters. So it's great. So Yasmin, another question for you, if you will. Basically, what are the challenges and barriers that you face in promoting this type of global pro bono projects, as the one you just shared with us, and how do you address them?
Sure, I'll just take up the issue around billing and hours and recognition, because I think whilst I totally agree that there needs to be recognition for billable hour time, I worry sometimes that that becomes a distortion from the impact. So whenever we take on a pro bono matter, I try to encourage our people to think, what is the impact that's going to result from your devotion of pro bono hours? Because otherwise there's a tendency to do large international pieces of research that don't go anywhere. And actually what we, at the end of the day, where we get our purpose from is exactly as Jackie has said, is what is the impact for the individual? So I think the billable hour credit is an interesting one, and we shouldn't get too hung up on hours. It's what can you do with that hour of your time that is going to make a difference for the people around you. So in terms of challenges, honestly, it's trying to ensure that we find the right types of project for the individual skill set of our lawyers. And sometimes we need them to be a little bit more courageous and to step out of their comfort zone to try and get involved in things that they feel they want to, but they might not have, or they might feel that they don't have the skill set for. But in actual fact, they do, because all of us know how incredibly specialized and trained our people are, and they can engage in quite challenging, with some training, quite challenging work. And I think that's really important, because the more we encourage people to step out of their comfort zone, the more they will get from it and the reward that they have, and the more that they will see why it's important for them to do it in the future. So I think the first part is to try and find the right types of work, and sometimes that's difficult. You've got to work very closely with the NGO community. I know Lila and I spend an awful long time talking to NGOs, charities, to help them understand what we as lawyers can do for them, because it's a cultural issue for them as well. And I'm sure that's true in Mexico as it is in London, that sometimes the NGO charity community just don't know how brilliant it is to have one of us come along and try and help and analyze and problem solve for them. And it takes time to build that trust and relationship with your partner, with your community partner. And I feel like when we turn up and we say we're going to fix your problem, that just does not go down well. We need to understand and get proximate to the issue and the problem that we're dealing with, and not make assumptions. And that, for us as lawyers, we must learn to listen. We're not always the greatest at listening. We tend to assume we know what the problem is. So it's actually really good skills-based building to get us to take a step back and listen. And as part of that, we have something called HL Base, where we train all of our lawyers globally in the first 3 or 4 days that they come into the firm to work with social entrepreneurs, people who are trying to change the world for good, but using a business mechanism to do so. But the first meeting they have with their client, we tell them to listen. Don't say anything. Just ask 1 or 2 open questions. Get your client talking and build that relationship so that we understand exactly what it is they need and exactly what that impact is. And then the other thing I think that's a real challenge is keeping it fresh. So obviously we have real need across the world, and you'll often find young lawyers want to do international human rights work. They're all very excited about international human rights work, but they forget that actually your grassroots work with people who are homeless, who need benefits, that's human rights work too. And it's so crucial and so important. And trying to translate that enthusiasm for the global and the thing you see in the news through to actually the grassroots where it's really going to matter, I think is quite hard. But I think the way we do that is through storytelling. I think Jackie said just now is about storytelling. We tend to tell stories in all sorts of different ways. We do it by film. We do it by individuals talking about their experiences. We try and get the organizations in to talk about their situation and what it's really like for them on the ground. And then finally, kind of motivating people, I think can be a challenge. You have your swag. We don't have swag, but we do have a kind of awards process, and you can feed it in through we have highlights awards, both for fee earning practice and for pro bono practice, but it's all rooted in the same awards. So there's no distinction made between a fee earning success and a pro bono success. And that way it goes up to management, and it's seen as a really fantastic way of recognizing people. So those would be my challenges and how I overcome them.
Thank you, Yasmin. I will open here a space perhaps for everyone in the panel if you would have some comments on motivation on young lawyers to do pro bono, recognition of time worked on pro bono, or just to add something to Yasmin's response. Someone wants to add something?
I will say we don't have that much swag, but we do have, I don't want to make you guys too jealous. We don't have that much swag, but the awards piece that Yasmin mentioned, I think is such a great way to highlight some of the strengths and the great things that were done. And then people want to model those great successes. So that awards piece to me, we do that in local offices. We also do some kind of bigger regional and global awards that we send out of our pro bono team. And that recognition matters. Letting people feel really proud of the work they did also really motivates and inspires other people to get involved. So I'm really glad you mentioned that as an example, because it's a really powerful tool that we use too.
Yeah, this is Lisa. I would just echo that. And in fact, we are having tonight, or this evening, we're having a pro bono celebration in our Washington, D.C. office. and also including our Northern Virginia office. And we haven't done that since the pandemic, an in-person celebration of pro bono. So we're all very excited, and there's a lot of people in the office today. But I completely agree, having the internal recognition. But I think also the important thing, Yasmin, that you said too, is integrating pro bono into everything, not distinguishing between the successes that may be on the billable side versus successes that you have on pro bono matters, making sure that that's all integrated. And I think that is a very strong statement that the firms are making, and also makes everybody feel like their work is truly valued, which it is, regardless of whether it's pro bono or not. So that's really, really important. And completely agree about the storytelling. I've seen the stories that both your firms have shared, and the beautiful videos and reports, and they're all gorgeous, and we all are trying to do as much as we can as well at DLA Piper to tell our stories, whether through video, but also, I think, as you both said, those client testimonials about the impact of the work. And I completely agree, Yasmin, with your beginning comments about not being so focused on hours, but impact, and that's really where it's at. And I think that's picks up on your point, Jackie, about motivation, because people are motivated by knowing that they can change somebody's life for the better.
Absolutely. And I think we can do impact in so many different ways, and storytelling in so many different ways. Lila just reminded me, about 2 years ago, or maybe even more, before the pandemic, we actually put on a stage show. And we hired a little theatre, and we had Lady Justice doing a performance review of the two trainee solicitors, but each of the segments was a genuine real client giving their testimony. And it was moving and poignant, and we had song and dance. I'm not sure I'd ever put on quite a show again like that. It was exhausting, but it was really fun. So I think you can be creative in lots of different ways.
And that was a great show, Jasmine. I was invited to it, and I could say that I always say in Estándares Pro Bono Mexico, we should do a play like yours, and as motivating all of our colleagues in Mexico.
Well, perhaps I will continue with the questions, so we keep in time. Lisa, basically, as you know, this year we are focusing on inspiring university students to do pro bono work. And we would like you to share with us what for you would be the most important message you would give to young people about the importance of contributing to solving world's issues and to help on pro bono matters.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
And congratulations on that being a theme. I love that theme. I love the idea of motivating and inspiring, really inspiring, I think is the word, the next generation of lawyers to immediately understand pro bono and feel motivated and inspired to become engaged, and to make it part of their careers forever, right? That's so important. And I have to say that teaching at law schools is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I have had the honor and the privilege for the last, well, maybe 12 plus years of working, as I think many of you know, with Mexico Appleseed and Maru Cortazar and her team there, teaching on pro bono at law schools in Mexico City. And it's been such a pleasure, and it inspires me. And I learn just as much every time as I may be sharing about access to justice and pro bono. So I think it is so important to do that. And I would say that my message, and this is a message that I give every time I teach, is number one, just do it. It's important, and it's really important to do it right away. Really figure out immediately when you become a lawyer how you can incorporate pro bono into your regular practice. I think the other thing that I would say, the second thing is that the point about professional development, which I think I said before, which is pro bono is an excellent way to gain experience and to develop skills very early on in your career. Oftentimes it's through that pro bono work that you can gain those skills before the other work that you might be engaged in. And doing pro bono work will allow you to often meet people and to work with people who you would not otherwise know. And that in turn will develop your network as a young lawyer. You'll meet people outside of your practice area, maybe outside of your particular office that you might be working in. And even just as important is meeting the legal services organizations in your community, the organizations that may be on the front lines where pro bono may be referred to you from. That's important to really get to know your community, the other leaders in your community, and to understand what the challenges are, what the needs are, where your services are needed in the community. The third thing I would say to law students and to new lawyers is that working on pro bono is going to be incredibly fulfilling. We oftentimes, and I'm sure Jackie and Yasmin have stories just like I do, where lawyers may tell you working on that pro bono case was the not only the most fun, but one of the most rewarding things I've had the opportunity to do as a lawyer. It is something that I will never forget. I will never forget the gratitude of my client or the impact I was able to have on somebody's life. So I think, being a lawyer is hard work. It can often be stressful, but if you incorporate pro bono into your mix of all the other responsibilities that you have and the work that you're doing, I think it is good for our own wellness. It feeds the soul, as many people say. And I think you will be a happier lawyer for in your career, which is really important. And then the fourth thing, and maybe the final thing, and maybe the most important thing, and this gets back to the access to justice crisis, is that I would tell law students and young lawyers that the world needs you. You have no idea the impact that you have, the power that you have, and the responsibility to do work for the good. It reminds me, I've often shared this quote from Spider-Man, which I've been told is Spider-Man's uncle, but with great power comes great responsibility. And I think remembering that, and also understanding that even as a young lawyer, you often feel like, oh, I don't know enough, or I'm not sure if I could really do that. We often, I'm sure all of us have heard that from young lawyers. And, first of all, I would say oftentimes the choice is between you and nothing, right? I mean, we're talking about the statistic I gave earlier was that over 90% of people in the United States with legal needs do not get the help that they need. And our jobs as pro bono counsel at our law firms is to help provide that training, working again with our local organizations and wonderful legal service provider partners, but to provide that support to you so that you will have a good experience and you can do it. So not only just do it, but you can do it. And we need you. Our profession needs you. The world needs you. So I will stop there, and I'm happy. I'm sure Jackie and Yasmin may have things to add to that, but it's so inspirational to work with law students, and it gives me hope every time I do it for our future.
Yasmin, Jackie, do you want to add?
Yeah, it was just, this has come up from Yasmin and from Lisa, and I want to just underscore this can mentality is so important in pro bono. And I'm glad you both raised it, because I feel like, especially at a young stage of your career, for folks to truly feel like, yes, I can do this. We're going to support you. You're going to have the resources you need. You may not know everything about this topic, but you can take on the work. And I find that sometimes that can mentality we still need to push to some of our more senior experienced lawyers, that yes, you may be an expert in deal work, but I promise you, you can take that legal knowledge, you can take those skills, and you can translate it to something else, and you can do it. And I think that message is so incredibly powerful. And on the flip side of that those professional development skills you mentioned, Lisa, as I was growing up in the firm as a tax litigator in my practice life, I took on a ton of litigation pro bono matters in criminal court here in Chicago. I wanted to grow my litigation skills. I wanted to build myself as a litigator. And I'll tell you, when it came time to find an associate to staff a major tax litigation trial, I got tapped because I was the person that had the most litigation experience. And I'll tell you, if you looked at my litigation experience, 95% of it was in pro bono, but I got that confidence of being in court, and I was looked at as that associate that could lead this team and be the key associate. And it's such a powerful reminder that you don't have to stay in your substantive area of practice to build your skills and to build your talents, that instead find a problem you want to solve and find a way to build your skills through it. So I'm so glad you mentioned that, Lisa. It's a powerful reminder, particularly to law students as they start framing out their career and moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If we're on to quotes, my favorite one is the Mark Twain one. There are two great days in your life: the day you were born and the day you realized why. And you only realize why when you push yourself out of your comfort zone and try and find that. So it is, it's time to cut your teeth when you're young and when you can really try. And you make mistakes, and that's okay. That's really okay. Because there are people around who can support you and take you through that, and you'll come out a better lawyer at the end of it.
We have a question for all panelists. Basically, Jackie mentioned about receiving suggestions and proposals from associates for the pro bono program. And the question is, how do you manage suggestions received? Basically, the concern is that by asking for and receiving the team's suggestion is not always feasible to meet expectations. So if you can expand on that a little bit.
As far as taking in suggestions from folks that are interested in taking on certain topics, that comes in a couple different forms for us, at least. I'd be interested for Lisa and Yasmin how you guys handle this as well. But for us, a lot of that is, that's why I try to have a lot of conversations with a lot of folks coming into the firm to figure out what they're into and what areas they've worked in the past that they may want to continue to do here at Baker. But we have kind of an open way for folks to want to get involved in pro bono. It's not very sexy or exciting, but it's really a form where we tell everyone, if you want to get involved in pro bono and bring in a matter, we have to make sure that matter is properly staffed. We need to make sure that all the folks that are there that can help with the matter, there's a partner at the helm. We need to make sure it qualifies as pro bono. So we're going to ask you some questions about that. We need to make sure we have the budget for it. And if we've got the people there and we've got the expertise and the budget, and it fits with our pro bono, it fits within what we consider pro bono, then we're going to have folks bring that on. And that goes to that inspiration. Everybody is inspired or excited by different things. So we try to focus on areas of impact at Baker and McKenzie from the perspective of our pro bono practice, but that's never at the stopping point of other things getting done that folks feel passionate about and can bring a team together to do well.
So the way we do it is exactly that, is have those conversations, but we also have a wider policy. We have committed as a firm to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, like many of the other firms, and that really is the framework by which we judge everything. So we have particular target SDGs, which we have decided are material to the firm's business, and therefore we are trying to angle a lot of the work that we do. And of course, climate and the climate crisis is a major topic. This is an existential threat. I don't think I can say it enough that we need to apply all our resources as much as we can to the nature depletion and the climate crisis. But that's one of many. We have gender and race. And we're trying to shape people's thinking into how does that have an impact on those particular issues. Doesn't mean to say we can't help you with address these other things, but those are the ones that the firm has decided institutionally that we would like to focus on.
Yeah, and similar at DLA Piper in the United States, our mission, our pro bono mission, is to promote access to justice in our communities, also around the world, but focusing on gender and racial equality, combating hunger. It's a really big one for us. And then also advocating on behalf of children. So those are kind of our big focus areas. But just like Jackie and Yasmin said, we also are very open to hearing new ideas, new areas that people are particularly interested in. And of course, I think it gets back to that. What are you passionate about? We've oftentimes will ask our young associates too, like, what is it that you care about? What is it that you feel strongly about? And then, how do you feel like that fits within your skill set? And to your point about staffing, making sure that this is staffed appropriately. But we have those conversations with our lawyers all the time about new pro bono matters. Pro bono is something that we expect everybody at the firm to do. And so we also want to make sure that everybody has a really good experience, and knowing that you're working on something that you're particularly interested in is a way to do that.
I think you're on mute, Charin. Sorry.
For the panel, there is an additional question, perhaps to share a little bit in a very concise way. What would be your recommendation for a firm to start with a pro bono initiative? How to organize? I don't know who would like to answer that question.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. I think one of the themes you're hearing from the three of us is we all, for our firms, have areas that we focus on. We call them areas of impact. Everybody calls them different things, but we have substantive areas where we say, we think our teams are best served to solve these problems. Again, not at the stopping point of anything else, but really, if we're going to take in work and we're going to support things with resources, it's probably going to be in those key areas, children's rights being the biggest for us at Baker and McKenzie. So my suggestion would be to find a common problem or a common issue that you want to solve, to bring commonality around something that a lot of people feel like, I want to invest in this. And that may be a project, that may be an issue, that may be a client, but start somewhere on a particular issue and really build from there. It's those successes. And I've had a lot of successes that aren't successes, right? Being in court and struggling for an immigration case that you worked your tail off and you still lost. But that's still a success for a team that you stood up and represented somebody. So I would say, find a problem that you want to solve or an issue you want to focus on and really make that your grounding place to build from.
Thank you. If you would like, we can go ahead with our final question for all the panel. The final question is about if you can share with us the most emblematic global project that your firm has led or in which it has been participating, and why do you consider this participation has been fundamental in supporting social and environmental issues, and what has been the role of the other offices in different countries while participating in these global assignments? I will start with Jackie, please. Thank you.
So the example I want to give is a little bit less of a project and a little bit more of a way of doing pro bono. Lisa, I think it was you that mentioned at the beginning that we all had to really pivot during pro bono and during COVID, figure out how do we get things done? How do we get people engaged, particularly at a time where at least what I found was more people wanted to be engaged and work with people even while separated. And so we kind of created a model here within Baker that we fondly call Justice in Action. And it's really a way of doing pro bono together. And the way Justice in Action works is it's kind of an event, so to speak, largely virtual, where over the course we invite people to come and work with us for 4 hours. We train them on a project, probably a project that folks have absolutely zero substantive knowledge on, going to building that can mentality, letting folks know that you can work on something you may not know anything about with training. So we train folks, and then we divide people into small groups for people to work together on that substantive project. And then at the end of 4 hours, we kind of wrap up that work together and folks go on with their day. We've done this Justice in Action model now, I would say almost 80 times over the course of the last 18 months. And have had well over 3,000 volunteers between our firm and probably 60 other companies over the course of different sessions come and join us to work together on pro bono. And the reasons I think this program has been successful, and it's really been launched on a global scale. So just 2 weeks ago, we ran 3 different sessions, one in the Americas, one in kind of the EMEA time zone, one in the Asia Pacific time zone, so that folks anywhere could participate in these. And I think the reasons they've been successful are a few. So the substantive work we're doing largely relates to projects that we're working on that are really children's rights focused. So a couple are our Real Rights Project, which is looking at the laws in each jurisdiction on the interaction of law enforcement and young people. So what are your rights if you're sitting on the street in the city of Chicago? Can an officer ask you to open your backpack? What can you say in response to that? So really practical questions and answers that young people need to know when they're dealing with law enforcement in each particular jurisdiction. Another project we've run in the Justice in Action model is an ID project. So mapping out the laws started as really US based, but has really turned into more of a global project because getting a legal identification for youth experiencing homelessness is a giant challenge and a giant barrier to youth experiencing homelessness finding some level of success and stability. So this ID work is really focused on the challenging questions that relate to young people that don't have any access to any form of ID whatsoever. So if I'm a young person and I am 17 and I am homeless and I have no form of ID and I'm living in Paris, how do I get an identification? So that work again is kind of done on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis. Those 2 projects are just a couple examples of the substantive work that we do in this Justice in Action model. And I think the substance and the topics have been part of the reasons they've been successful. These are issues people want to think about. They feel like they can do work in this space and really bring us back valuable work product that we can use. I think the other reason they've been successful is we really started it during COVID. We started it at a time when what we were hearing from our people was they want to do important pro bono work, but they also feel really separated from folks. They miss being around a table. They miss brainstorming on a case in a conference room or working on a hotline all together. So we thought, how can we bring people together to do something in a way that we can get meaningful work and they can feel like they're building community? And so that was really, I would say in some ways, the biggest genesis for creating this model that largely runs on Zoom was that kind of focus on community. And I think the third piece is people want to feel like they're part of something too. And so we've kind of started to build a real community around this idea of justice in action. And every time we run a new session, we invite all of our participants. The sessions that we ran week before last, we had over 500 participants between those 3 sessions. So over 500 people participating in pro bono together over 4 hours, which is a staggering statistic in some ways for folks to come in and say, you know what, I'm going to invest with you over this time. And I'm going to do work that feels important. We've noticed we're kind of going hybrid a little with Justice in Action as more people feel comfortable getting together. But our last sessions, a couple folks that were working together kind of went in conference rooms together, but it still really works for people to come in on Zoom or come in person. And I think that flexibility and taking people where they're at and giving them ways to get involved and contribute on a global scale. We've had, I think most of our offices to date have participated in one of the Justice in Actions we've run, but that that flexibility and malleability to let people come in and work and do important work and go has been something that I think we're going to keep working on for a long time. But I think it might have been you, Lisa, that stress of trying to how to keep it fresh, trying to tweak the model a little bit so it continues to be fresh and continues to be something that's exciting to folks to be part of is what we're looking forward to as we look toward next year. But I think this idea of bringing people together shoulder to shoulder, whether virtual or in person, in pro bono is going to be a cornerstone of our pro bono practice for a long time.
Thanks, Jackie. Yasmin, would you like to share your experience on this issue?
Sure. Mine is slightly different in that we have been working on a particular case, and it's casework. It's a global international case. Some of you might know of it. It was a tragic case where 39 migrants died in the back of a lorry in the east coast of the UK in a region called Essex, and they had been trafficked from Vietnam across Europe through France, through Belgium, and then they had gone by ferry in the lorry across to the United Kingdom and sadly perished in an overheated van, and 39 young people died. The case also involved 2 Irish drivers who came to collect the lorry and were going to take it off for trafficking purposes. That case was horrendous, and it hit the UK headlines about 2 years ago. It was shocking, and people really wanted an answer and a solution. We knew that law enforcement in the UK would start to investigate, but we also knew they would probably neglect the rights of the families. And the idea that the families should be involved in getting some sort of redress or compensation or just recognition that they had been bereaved and their family members had died in this most horrible way. We were very fortunate, and it's what I was talking about before, of having a relationship with the different NGOs that you work with. We happen to have a relationship with an NGO which is part in the United States and part in Vietnam. Working with them and supporting them, they were able to make contact with the families. And suddenly these migrants, who were just numbers in the UK press, they were just the 39 Essex, suddenly they became real people, because we had taken the witness statements from the families in rural Vietnam with our Vietnamese office, and we had taken those witness statements and we made the people real to law enforcement in the UK. And initially, law enforcement in the UK said, no, the families don't want to have any input into this process, into this criminal process. In fact, at one stage, they told me the criminal process isn't for victims. It was shocking. And we had to advocate and say, no, I'm sorry, but criminal justice is about the victims. And we were able to submit the witness statements for the families from the 39 as part of the criminal justice process. But more importantly, we were also able to put those witness statements into the financial investigations process, which meant that we could recover compensation from the assets of the traffickers. And we did that in the United Kingdom to begin with. And then we realized, of course, there was a chain of traffickers who were involved, including in Belgium, in France, and then in Vietnam. And so at each point in the case, we have made the victims' voices known. And at each case, we have secured compensation for the victims. But what that case did was to, as we were talking about, it was a specific example of the offices coming together. We had London, Brussels, Paris, and Vietnam all working together to try and bring about a solution. And there was nothing more rewarding and empowering than to see your work achieving a result. Now, we've secured compensation in the UK. Belgium have just made an order, but it's being appealed, and we now need to get into the investigation in France. But for me, also, we have discovered the failings of the system all the way through, the lack of coherence between law enforcement across the world, the lack of fundamental legislation, and the implementation of the trafficking directive in Europe. And how does that relate to a third country like Vietnam? And we've begun to realize policy issues. And a result of those policy issues, we can now start to make advocacy at a global national level to change things. So it has shown us so much of what the potential is when we work together, and the potential of working with other people within the chain. So we have used corporate client connections to get financial investigators to help us on a pro bono basis. And so we've taken the names of the defendants and given them to the investigations, commercial investigations team, and said, help us find out about these people. And gradually we're beginning to piece together what exactly happened on that tragic day. That's just one example, but it shows for me what the potential is when we really work all together. It's fantastic.
That's a wonderful example, Yasmin. Thank you for sharing that with us. Lisa, and if you would like to go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Maria. It is so inspiring to hear these examples from Jackie and Yasmin. I'm just like, yeah, congratulations to both of you. Those are amazing projects. The example that I would give, and it also, to your point, Jackie, it's kind of a way of doing pro bono, is that DLA Piper created a nonprofit affiliate called New Perimeter in 2005. So it is a way that we do global pro bono work, and the way that we bring all of our lawyers at DLA Piper together on projects. And New Perimeter focuses on promoting access to justice, building sound legal institutions, and social and economic development. And through all of that work, we're looking at women's advancement, really trying to look at our work through that lens. We have co-directors right now of New Perimeter. So it has its own staff. Sarah Andrews, who is based in our Boston office, and Claire Dance, who is based in London, are the co-directors of New Perimeter. And the idea is to bring together DLA Piper lawyers, again, from around the world, to work on projects together. And oftentimes, especially prior to the pandemic, these projects provide an opportunity for teams of lawyers to travel and to spend time in country working on those projects, sometimes for weeks at a time. And there also is a way for us to make long-term commitments. So these projects can go on for years. One of our first projects was in Kosovo, where we worked for over a decade, working first with the UN peacekeeping mission and then with the National Center for State Courts on building new systems as that country was rebuilding. So this is another example of a project, New Perimeter project, I want to offer is teaching. We do a lot of teaching and capacity building on the ground, but we don't just go once, we'll go over and over again with that long-term commitment, really, so that we can have a sustainable impact. And another example is we've been teaching women lawyers in Nepal alongside the Nepal Bar Association and an NGO called Women Lawyers Joining Hands. So really building the capacity of women lawyers who have not had the same opportunities as their male counterparts in that country. And what we found is that when we're not there too, we've been able to help facilitate a network among the women lawyers there to support one another and lift each other up. So those are just a couple of examples that have been wonderful to see happen through New Perimeter. Another example that's more recent, and I feel like, Yasmin, you may have mentioned this early on in the panel, which is work helping women from Afghanistan. And so one of the projects that we've been working on over the last year that we have been really proud to be a part of, and has been an example of how our global pro bono team at DLA Piper has come together, is working with the International Association of Women Judges and another law firm, Fried Frank, to help Afghan women judges. And it was recently recognized at the PILNET conference in Ireland with a Global Partnership Award. But it was a way for us to come together and do what we can, again, working alongside the International Association of Women Judges to help Afghan women judges, many of whom have come to the United States that we're now representing with regard to their immigration matters, but many other women judges who have been able to get out of Afghanistan are settling in other locations, and we've been able to come together as a global team to do what we can to help. So I will stop there, but I think it's just another example of the power of collaboration and the power of coming together as firms and organizations to really do what we can to have an impact on issues that are critical during this time. So thank you, Maria.
No, thank you to all of you. If there are no more comments from the panel or questions, I don't know, but are there some comments from someone else in the panel? No? Okay. So I would really like to say thank you. I enjoyed so much our discussion today. It was really wonderful. I just really enjoyed it a lot. And we really appreciate all this time sharing all your experiences with us. I think they are very valuable. And I will turn now to Miriam Villafaña for our final comments and conclusions. I will quickly introduce Miriam. Miriam has been working on talent management matters for 20 years in more than 3 companies. Miriam and I are colleagues and very good friends. We started our Baker McKenzie Pro Bono Committee in Mexico more than 10 years ago. And today, Miriam is in charge of our corporate social responsibility area. She's the director of it. So we work a lot together. It's a pleasure, and she's my friend too. So Miriam, if you want to go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Sharin. And thank you for the opportunity to close this amazing panel. I'm sure that all of us are feeling very inspired by the extraordinary conversation that we have here from our panelists. And we had the honor to have with us remarkable women who are pro bono leaders in their law firms and communities. They are role models for us, and we are learning from their example the importance of pro bono work, how to increase the impact of the activities, but maybe the most important thing is that we all can and should do pro bono work. And this message is even more important for young lawyers who are starting their careers. As we saw in the panel, lawyers have this amazing opportunity to influence the changes regarding the big socio-environmental issues. And it's amazing how everything is evolving in the world, and also how the pandemic changed the route of many issues, and pro bono is not an exception. Our panelist shows us different perspectives about the trends and how pro bono work changed and opened new opportunities for our sector in particular. At this point, we know that one of the big challenges that global and local law firms are facing is to increase the impact of the pro bono work, and people working together is a key for achieving this goal. The different ideas are very interesting that our panelists share with us about how to bring the pro bono work closer to our lawyers. And I personally believe that communicating is key on this topic, but communication is not the only tool we should use. Sharing the heart of the project is also very important, and probably is the kind of things that we need to hear to really engage with the cause. I'm sure that we all love the emblematic global projects that our panelists share with us. They gave us inspiration and ideas for our own projects. And I think that it's a unique opportunity for our global law firms to take advantage of the multiple jurisdictions and practices that they have. With this in mind, We as a sector need to do more global pro bono work, while it's important to do local projects as well to impact our communities nearby. Thank you again for our extraordinary panelists for sharing their thoughts, recommendations, ideas, and their knowledge with us. Thank you, Jaclyn, for moderating this panel. And thank you also to the Estándares Pro Bono for their amazing work expanding the pro bono culture in Mexico. We are very proud to collaborate with other important law firms and clearinghouses as a team towards this remarkable objective. And we will see in future events. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. You have said it all, and it's for me a pleasure to have you and Jaclyn here as well, and Carla Aguilar from behalf of Estándares Pro Bono, and Yvette Montero and Maru Cortázar, which is on behalf of all of us and all of the team of Estándares Pro Bono. We are very glad to have this panel. You have said it all. This is a great panel, and Lisa, Jaclyn, and Yasmin, role models for all of us. And the things that you are doing impact us very much. And we think that as a closing message for us, Estándares Pro Bono Mexico, and the law firms that we promoted and that we are part of this as all of us together here, that we are renowned in a whole team to do pro bono. We are one, and we are one team in the country to do it. So we invite every lawyer, wherever it is, to come with us and be near the pro bono teams of Estándares Pro Bono, or wherever you can find it, because it's very easy to find a case in pro bono, as you have all said. And we want to continue motivate all of the lawyers around the country and around the world to have this social responsibility as lawyers that we do have. And it's not just because we are good people, it's because we have this responsible from the profession that we care. So thank you very much for this great morning. It was a pleasure to share with you and to be here with all of you. And we are gladly all women right now, so we have that in common as well. So we will continue doing this. And thank you very much for all your hard work. And let's continue to promote pro bono around Mexico and around the world. Thank you, Denise, for all your hard work for making this happen. With that, we just have some comments around the panel, and this is great to have you here. And we will be closing right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.